start there. So did everyone enjoy chapter 5?
Yes.
I think, Aura, you mentioned you liked it, right?
I did. Yeah, I like it better than the last one.
Yeah, good.
Yes.
You're starting to see how it applies to real world decisions, right?
Yes.
Yeah, good. Were you able to get into the problem set, the Excel file yet, and play around?
I did. Yes.
Good. Yeah, I thought it would be nice to actually have that set up for you already, so you could kind of see how different things, change when you added things, right?
Yes.
So good. All right. Well, I was going to actually jump into some problems on chapter 5 because it definitely seems like that's a good way for people to understand how the chapter works through problems. So, anybody have any questions before we jump into problems?
No.
No. Okay. Perfect. All right. I'm going to share my screen and get into the Excel file that I'm working in here. Okay, can you all see it?
Yes.
Yep, okay. So the problems that I assigned you were not from the book. Those were problems that I created. But I'm going to use the book problems for us to kind of go through tonight, or some of the book problems anyway, because they are good, and I think it'll be good for us to kind of look. You'll be able to see them then and maybe practice on your own if you like. So I started actually with the last problem, which is 5.9, because I figured if we went to that one first, then maybe we would, everything else would be really easy, right? So that problem in the book, and I actually set it up here, but I might actually just start a brand new one because I want everyone to see how I actually put it together, okay? So I'm going to, are you guys able to see my Excel spreadsheet?
Yes.
Yes, okay, good. All right, I'm going to set up a new file here. Okay, this problem is for Charity Hospital, a non-for-profit, and it has a maximum capacity of 15,000 discharges. So let's go ahead and put that in our spreadsheet. Maximum capacity of 15,000. Okay. And then it says, so what I normally do on these problems is I just use sort of my upper corner to kind of put all my metrics and statistics in so I can keep track of them, right? And I sort of know where to go. So then they're saying that we have a variable patient services cost of $495. So let's go ahead and put that in. Okay. So that is essentially a rate, right? It's a rate amount. So it's a per unit number, right? So we're going to put that in there, $495. Then it has another item, which is the variable general and administrative costs. So we'll put that in there as well. It's called G&A. That's $5 per unit, okay? Now, it basically says we've got fixed costs, right? So the fixed costs are $4 million, okay? So these are all our stats that we need to be aware of. Now, the first question that they're asking, and I'm going to just put those as dollars because those are rates. Okay, so when we, before we go there, let me just go ahead and go back. So we've got maximum capacity, which is in discharges, right? So does somebody want to tell me, which one of these items are the units? Because a lot of what we're doing is rate and unit analysis. So which of these discharges, variable patient service costs, variable G&A, or fixed costs, which one of these are considered the units?
Discharge?
Discharges. That's right. So it's really important that you identify which one are the units when you start, right? So when in this kind of analysis that we're doing, there's always going to be a unit, and it's really important we understand what that is. And then there's rates. Okay, there's going to be different rates. Does anybody know which one of these are rates?
Everything below.
Well, so the rate is something that's going to be per unit. Okay, it's like a price at a grocery store. That's like your cost per unit. So when you look at this patient services cost, they're called variable patient services costs. And I think the way that it describes it is per discharge, right, in the book. So the per discharge means every discharge, right, gets charged this amount. So that is essentially a per unit amount, or another way to say it is a rate. Okay, rates can come in lots of different sizes, but when you read your problem, you have to know what's a rate, what's a unit. Now, what's interesting is we also have variable G&A. So that also is a rate, because those are per discharge also. So we have, I'll go ahead and put that in here just to make it really clear. Per discharge. Okay. So essentially what that means is every time you have a discharge, these costs are incurred. Okay, so it's, does everyone understand the concept of variable and fixed? Do you want me to maybe back up for a minute and talk about that, or does everyone know what that, what the meaning of those terms are?
So a fixed cost is considered like rent, equipment, taxes, those kind of costs.
Mm-hmm. Mm-hmm. Anyone else want to take a stab at that? That's right. What you described is correct. I think what I'm trying to figure out though is if you were to describe what a variable cost was in terms of the mechanism, how does it work versus a fixed cost? You think you could describe that?
I can describe that.
Okay.
Yeah, so fixed cost is basically, even if you do not have any discharges, you will still be charged that. And variable rate is that if you have one discharge, and then it will be basically $500, and then just multiplying that by units.
Right.
Charge.
Okay. Can Mina or Jennifer, can one of you guys mute, because I'm not sure who it is, but I'm hearing a lot of background noise. Okay, great. Thank you so much. I really appreciate that. So that's right. Essentially, a variable cost means that it's the cost of producing the unit, or it's the cost of buying the unit. Often it's used in production. So if you, or it can also be used in, it's associated, it's basically the cost that's associated with that unit, whatever the unit is. So if you don't have the unit, you don't have the cost. So it's the unit itself is generating or requiring that cost. Whereas a fixed cost is not associated with a single unit. It exists on its own without the units. Okay, so a bit, often this concept is used in manufacturing environment, because when you produce a unit, it costs a certain amount of money to produce that unit. So you might have labor, and the labor might be related to producing that one unit. It's 5 hours of labor to produce this unit. And then, so you know exactly how much it costs for every unit to produce, and it doesn't change, it's the same. Costs in the manufacturing environment would be paying the utility bill. So you have a big manufacturing plant and you have to pay that light bill. It doesn't matter if you're producing units in the plant or not. You still have to pay the light bill, right? You still have to pay the janitorial service to come and clean it up. So those are what we call fixed costs, because those are costs that are not dependent on the units at all. Okay. So that's kind of how to think about it. So if they're one of the words that when you see the word variable, that is a kind of a way to know that they're usually talking about rate, okay? So if we're talking about variable patient services costs at discharge, that is the rate that we, the cost per discharge is $4.95. And then we have another charge, which is $5 per discharge. Fixed costs in this example are $4 million. So again, it doesn't matter how many units we have, we still have to pay $4 million in fixed costs. So now what they're asking in the first question is, how many units do you need to, how many discharges do you need to have happen in your clinic in order to break even? And break even means cover all your costs, okay? Now, the only other piece that we didn't include yet is the reimbursement. So that's essentially your revenue. That's what you're getting, right? For each one of these services, each one of these discharges, you're getting $1,000 per discharge, right? I think that's what it is. Yep, $1,000. So let's put that, reimbursements per discharge. Okay. Again, that's $1,000. And that is your rate. Oh, I think I put 10,000, didn't I? Yep. Okay, so that's your rate for your essentially it's your revenue rate. Okay, so I'll put that. So you have a revenue rate, how much you make per unit, and you have a cost rate, how much it costs you per unit. Okay, so now what we're going to do is now the question asks, how many units do you need how many discharges in order to break even? So we're going to do it sort of the old-fashioned way, and we're just going to say, we're going to do a little table, okay? So we're going to have units on one side, all right? Here's our units, and we can do different scenarios on this, okay? We're going to say, we're going to have a column for variable cost, okay? We're going to have a column for fixed costs. Then we're going to add total costs. Okay. Then we're going to show revenue, right? We want to see how many units, not only how much does it cost us, but how much money we make on each unit. Okay. So here's where we'll put our units. Now let's do a couple formulas. This is where we're going to put units. So we're going to put in different, whatever value we want. Let's say we put 1, we put 500, 1,000, 5,000, 10,000, and then we said, it says the maximum number of discharges, remember up here, is 15. So that's all 15,000. That's the max number that we can have. That's our max, okay? So we can't go any higher than that. Now variable costs, okay, so we're looking back here. We've got $495 per discharge and $5 per discharge. So essentially what we can do is we can add them together. So we can add those two together, and that gives us our total variable cost, right? And that will be our per unit cost, which is 500. Now what I'm going to do is I'm going to lock these cells so that, I don't know if you guys know how to do that in Excel, but if you put a $sign in front of the cells that you don't want to change, it will stay the same. So I'm going to go ahead and put them in a bracket, lock them, and then I'm going to multiply those times my units to come up with my variable cost. Now, as I pull that down my file here, you'll see that my variable cost calculates now. It's calculating because it's taking the same per unit cost and it's multiplying it times the units to give me my variable cost, okay? So then I'm going to go ahead and load in my fixed cost. We know that the fixed cost is $4 million. It doesn't matter how many units we have, it's still 4 million. So that value stays the same, and I'm going to lock that cell as well, and I'm going to carry that down also. Okay? And then I'm going to add up my total costs. So I'm going to add up my variable costs, which are based on units. I'm going to add that to my fixed cost. Okay? So that I'm also going to pull down. So now I can see, and last but not least, I'm going to add my revenue in, okay? So I'm going to take, again, my revenue, and I know that I get $1,000 for every discharge. I'm going to multiply that times my units, which are in this column over here, And maybe I will make that a little bit easier to see. And maybe I'll also make my table a little easier to see. Okay, make it like that. Okay. So now what I'm going to do is I'm going to take that $1,000, which is in cell D9, and I'm going to lock it again using my $sign so it doesn't change. And I've multiplied it times, you can see my units over here on the left. And so if I pull that formula down, you can see again that the formula is still pointing to my $1,000 per unit, but it's moved to follow my units, okay? So now you can see if we look at this table, we've got various scenarios here. We've got 6 different scenarios, okay? The first scenario shows a unit, only 1 unit of discharge. And it shows what that unit of discharge costs, which is the $500 per unit. The fixed cost of $4 million for the 1 unit. So then essentially the total cost is $4,500,000. And we get $1,000 in revenue. As we keep going down and we look at the maximum, if we were to have 15,000 units, we would actually earn $7.5 million. We would have fixed costs of $4 million. Our total costs would be $11.5 million, and we would make $15 million in revenue, right? So then what we could do is we could do a little sort of P&L over here, if you will, like an income statement, and say, okay, I have $1,000 worth of revenue, and I'm going to subtract that from my costs, right, to see how much money I make or I lose. So you can see at 5,000 units, you're still losing money. You're losing $1.5 million. But once you hit 10,000 units, what happens? You start making money, right? You've all of a sudden made $10 million, and it's only cost you $9 million. So when we look at sort of how that, that gives you an idea that, you have to at least make over 5,000, somewhere between 5,000 and 10,000 units. You have to actually have between 5 and 10,000 discharges in order to actually break even, right? So what we could do now, again, sort of the old-fashioned ways, I could kind of guesstimate. Well, let's see. If it's 5,000 I'm losing and 10,000 I'm making money, let's go to 7,500 units. Now let's see how am I doing? Okay, for 75 I'm losing. So I'm going to go a little bit higher. Let's maybe say 8,000 units. Okay, whoops, 8,000 units. And look at that. What do you know? At 8,000 units, I'm breaking even, right? I don't lose and I don't make money at 8,000 units. So that's my break-even point, okay? And sometimes it's important to know that. You need to know how many units what your target is, what your goal is, so that you can start, instead of losing money, you're making money, right? And so that's sort of like the guesstimate way. There's another way that we can do this, and it's a formula that's in the book. So I don't know if anyone has seen that formula or played around with it, but I have it right here, so I'm going to bring it over. Okay. Basically, that formula says that if you were to solve for profit, okay, you want your profit to be 0. That's what you want it to be when you do a break-even, right? You're saying, what would I need? How many units would I need if I have a 0 profit, okay? And then what you're doing is you're saying, I'm asking myself what my volume is. So I know my rate, in this example, my revenue, because that's what it's asking for first, is total revenue less total variable cost less fixed cost equals profit. That is the formula. So if we use that formula and we just kind of plug in the numbers here, the rate, we know that our variable, our rate for profit is $1,000, right? And so we'd have to multiply that times whatever our volume is, our break-even volume, okay? Sorry, so I'm basically going to say X, right? Because we're solving for X, all right? Okay? And then I'm subtracting that from, I'm just putting this in Excel so it's not super user-friendly, times the rate, now our total variable rate, which we know is $500, right? So I'm going to put in 500 times, again, x, right? Times x times x. Okay. And then we subtract from that the $4 million because then it's the fixed cost, right? All right. So now I don't know if you guys have done algebra much, but this is kind of like an algebraic equation, right? So we've got 1,000x minus 500x minus 4 million equals 0. Okay, that's our problem. Okay, so I'm sorry, that's a minus. Okay. So what we could do is we could move some of these over to the other side, right? So it's basically going to be 4 million equals negative 1,000x plus, whoops.
Couldn't you just minus 1,000 minus 500x and get 500x?
Sorry, hold on a sec. It's very hard to do this in Excel. Sorry, you were giving me a shortcut, but I was going to do it the long way so you could see it.
I see.
I'm sure if you guys are good at algebra, you can definitely do this on your own, right? Yeah, let me move down here. 4 million. Okay. 4 million equals, all right? And then we'll do negative 1,000x negative 500. I say plus, sorry, plus 500x. Okay. Right? And so then, yeah, like you said, then it doesn't work well in Excel. Sorry, guys. Because it keeps.
I think it should be positive.
Yeah. All right. And then, like you said, we can subtract them, right? So then that's going to be negative 500x, right? We subtract the 2, right? Right, and that's then it's 4 million, right? Equals negative 500x, and then we divide both sides by 500, right? Pick this off x, right? Let me just do that now, okay? So we got 4 million divided by 500. What do you think the answer is?
8,000.
$8,000. So that's kind of a long way to do it, right? You can always do it that way. Honestly, sometimes I find it faster to do it this way, just by guesstimating. But that just says that there is a formula there that you can use, okay, to calculate that, and it's in the book. Sorry, it doesn't work very well in Excel just because it's not you can't really write. But in the homework I gave you, I actually put the formula in the table for you. You can play around with that formula. And just, you can put different values in and see what you're solving for, okay? But this is how we do a break-even analysis. So let me just pause and ask, you guys have any questions about this?
I just have a quick question about Excel. So when you're doing a function, you start with the equal sign?
Yes, you have to start with an equal sign. Yeah, exactly. You can also start with the plus sign. That will work as well, right? So, and I think that's why it's hard to put these in because, it's seeing any kind of negative, it's seeing as a function instead of text. So have you guys worked with the dollar signs and the locked cells before, or is that new?
It's new for
It's
me.
new. Okay.
Yeah, me too.
And you don't have to lock your cells, but I just find it much easier when you do that. When you're moving your formulas around, it just makes it a lot easier, okay? So this one is, that's the first question. And I'm going to just move on to the next one. Just again, I want to just make sure that you guys see how to work some of these problems. Okay, so we figured out the break even, which is 8,000 discharges. It says now is charities total discharges for 2014 total 1,000. So I'm going to go ahead and put 10,000 in here. Okay, in my table, right? All right. And there we go. Okay. In late 2014, a specialty cardiac hospital near charity, so that the discharges in 2015 will reach only 8,500. So that means they're actually going to only get 8,000. Am I in the next problem now? Let's see. Yep. 8,500, right? Yep. Okay, so that means that the next year it's going to be even less, 8,500. And management is planning to cut fixed costs so that the total for 2015 will be $1 million less. Okay, so this one is 2014 over here. This is 2015. Now they're going to cut fixed costs. So that would be here, correct? That would be this number, this 4 million number. And let me just get rid of these other ones so you don't get too confused by the other ones there, okay? I'm just going to hide them, all right? Okay, so you've got the two different scenarios, 2014 and 2015. 10,000 units in 2014. You made $1 million that year. You see, that was your profit. Now you're only able to sell 8,500 in 2015. Your profit's gone down quite a bit, hasn't it? You went from $1 million in profit to $250,000 in profit, and it was based on this competitor, right? That moved in next door. So your management has said, okay, let's do something. Let's cut our fixed costs. Okay, so they're coming in and they're saying we're going to cut our fixed costs, which used to be 4 million. So I'm actually going to go in this cell and I'm going to take $1 million out of those fixed costs. Okay, so that's one more zero. There we go. Now what just happened?
Profit increase.
What was that?
The profit increase.
That's right. So by working hard to reduce your fixed costs, it can have a really big impact on your profit. Really big impact. So even though you lost units, you still can affect other things, right, to impact your profit. Is there anything else that you could think of that you could have done to impact your profit besides reduce your fixed costs?
Charging people more money?
That's right. You could have negotiated a higher rate. But if you have a competitor nearby, that might have been hard, right? It might have been hard to charge more. But you could have gone after your variable costs, couldn't you? Couldn't you have said, okay, I'm going to cut my variable costs. So instead of charging, $4.95, I'm going to take $25 out of that. Okay, so let's minus $25. Now what happened there? I'm going to go ahead and put my $1 million back in. Okay, just because I want to see what that did. Okay, right. So by taking $25 out of your fixed costs, your revenue went from $250 to $462, right? And so what you could do is you could add another row here, and then you could do another scenario and say, well, I'm gonna do a separate scenario for doing variable cost decrease, one for doing my fixed cost decrease, and one for doing, my revenue increase. I'm going to look at all three of those and see what I need to do in order to get back to 1.250 million, right? So those would help you figure that out. But let me just keep going with the problem. Okay. So management is also considering reducing variable staffing costs in order to earn a target profit that will be the same dollar amount as the profit earned in 2014. Okay. Charity has already had 4,000 discharges in 2015 as a reimbursement rate of 1,000 per discharge, with variable costs unchanged. What contribution margin per unit is needed on the remaining 4,500 discharges in order to reach the target profit? Okay, so that's complex, right? Because you're like, okay, wait a second. We're already partway through the year. So let's think about that one, okay? So what I'm going to do here is I'm going to go ahead and unhide just because I want to get a few more rows, okay? Let's go ahead and unhide some of this. Okay. So again, it was kind of similar to the question I asked, right? Is like originally, right, we had earned a profit of 10,000. So this is sort of the target, right? Here's what we want to earn, our target profit, all right? There it is. That's what we're hoping for. Now, we got to come up with some scenarios, right, to figure out what do we need to do to get that target profit. And we know what our units are, right, because those are fixed, right? Our units are fixed, 8,500. So I'm going to go ahead and assume that that stays the same, right? Now, what we had already, there was already a given that we were going to be able to reduce our fixed costs by $1 million. I'm going to go ahead and do that in this formula. Okay, take them out. Take out $1 million. So that definitely changes. I'm going to go ahead and pick that up to all the items in this example. I'm going to hide these things. I don't want to get too confused. All right. So we got a couple scenarios here. I'm also going to my fixed costs, my variable costs don't change. They're the same as what we had up here. Now I think I still have my $25 that I take out. So I'm gonna go ahead and put that back in because I want to just look at this scenario first without any changes. And I'm going to increase my. I'm gonna go ahead and use this same formula here. Okay. So what's interesting is that the 85,000 units, we know that we ended up getting another, let's see, let me just make sure that this is in fact working here. Okay, you know what I think it's doing? It's, no, that's right. Yeah, that's correct, okay. So by taking that $1 million out, we know that we're gonna get 1,250,000, right? Now, what I'm gonna do for the partial year, because what we're saying is we have part of the year's already happened, right? In 2015, we already know that we already sold 4,500 units that we have already sold. Let's see, yeah, 4,000 have already occurred, so that's 4,000. We know that we got our $1,000 rate, okay? So that would be the revenue rate, which is here, okay, yep. And we know that, let's assume that our fixed costs are only, we can just assume that they're half, okay, because we know we're halfway through the year, right? Or actually, let me not do that. I'm not gonna do that yet, okay? I'm gonna just wait on that for a second, all right? But I am gonna go ahead and take my total cost formula. I'm gonna do this slightly differently, right? Okay. So we have half a year here, and this is basically, we know that we cost us $2 million because we know that for that half year we got charged the variable cost, and we know that we made the revenue on $4 million. So that's all clear. Okay. Now we're saying that we've got 4,500 more units that are remaining. Okay, these are the remaining. Okay, and what we want to do then is we want to add them together now. So we want to have another row where we're going to add them, the total. Okay, so here's simply going to be adding the two numbers together. Okay, on the variable. Now I think it is asking us though, right? What contribution margin per unit is needed on the remaining 4,500 discharges in order to reach the target profit. So what we want to figure out is, we know that the total is going to be 3 million because we know that our fixed costs for everything is fixed, right? So we know that the variable rate's fixed because we have that's done. We have the fixed cost, it's done. We know our total cost now, right, are these two numbers, okay? And our revenue, let's see. I think they're asking us what revenue, what contribution margin per unit is needed to hit the profit. Reducing variable. Oh no, so they are actually, excuse me, they are considering reducing variable costs. That's right. So I apologize. Let me just go back. So that's the remaining here, right? So we're looking at the remaining, and we're gonna take some action on our variable costs here. But what we want our total final number to be is the same, which is the $1 million. That's what we're looking for here. Okay, our revenue. And that's not changing. We're still going to be charging the $1,000. So what we want, what we're solving for here is, and I'm going to sum this because these works. What we're solving for then becomes the variable cost. Okay, this is what we're solving for, and it's only half of the year. It's in this cell that we're solving for. We have everything else figured out. Okay, we know that this half a year we already produced these units. Okay, we know that our fixed cost is $3 million in total. We know that we've made the revenue on both of these, and it's 8.5 million. Okay, so now the only thing we have left to figure out is what do we need to do? What costs do we need to produce in order to get, or what kind of reduction do we need in order to get this margin? Okay, so what I'm going to also do is I'm going to say we've got income of $1 million, and that is over 10,000. Over profit margin is $1 million over revenue of 10 million. So that's profit margin in this target is 10%. Okay, so if we look at this, we've made $1 million off of, we've made 11%. I think I'm missing the problem for just thinking. So just making sure, because I feel like I'm missing some element of this problem. So it's basically saying that we want to earn the same target profit, which is 10%, right? Because it's the, and right now the way that we've got this going is that we are already earning more. So, okay, so total costs are the 4.2, which is the adding of these two, plus this one. So I'm gonna do this on a new line so I can make sure that I got this. So what's interesting is the target profit is 10%. So I think what they're basically trying to reduce staffing costs just to make more profit, but they're already making more. Do you understand? Do you guys, are you following me? Like it's a little confusing, this problem. So I think maybe I'm just gonna keep going. Because I think that the book's not always as straightforward as I'd like it to be. But let me go up to the next, the one above it now. Okay, I'm going to switch to a different problem. All right, so this one is 5.8, the Triage Pediatrics, which recently provided 1,000 visits per year at a price of 50 for visits. So let's go to this problem. We'll start a new one, okay?
Sorry, before we move to 5.8, I just have a quick question. So
Sure.
for the actual Excel spreadsheet that we have to complete, are you expecting us to create these type of graphs or functions or no?
In the Excel spreadsheet that I sent you, that has graphs created in it. So you don't have to create them yourself. Mm-mm. Is that what you're asking?
Yeah, sorry, it got loud in my background.
Okay, yeah. So I think I just want you to be able to play with them a little bit and understand sort of what's going on with those graphs, okay? All right, let's go to the next. Let's go to one more problem here. All right, so I'm going to 5.8, all right? So this is Triangle Pediatrics currently provides 1,000 visits per year at a price of 50, okay? So we're gonna do the same kind of chart up here, right? So we've got visits, per year, right? And that's 1,000, right? Okay, and the cost per visit is $50. Okay, so that again, this is units, right? And this is rate. Okay, so it's the same kind of idea. All right. Okay. The variable cost per unit is $30. Okay, so let's do variable cost. All right. And again, as a rate, that's 30. Okay. Okay, so I'm sorry. This actually is it's not cost, it's revenue. So they're charging $50 per visit, right? They're charging their patients. It's revenue rate, okay? And then there's your variable cost rate, okay? So it's 50 that they're making per visit and 30 that it's costing them per visit, okay? And they have 1,000 visits per year, okay? The total fixed costs are 15,000. So let's put fixed costs. Okay, 15,000. All right. Okay. And then we are going to, the business manager suggests that Triangle Pediatrics can increase the number of visits to 1,200. So we're going to increase it by 1,200. Okay. By cutting the price per visit by $5. So the price, they want to take it down by $5 per visit. Okay. Okay.
Would the 1,200 be next to the 1,000 because they're talking about rates?
Yes, thank you. Visits per year, right?
Yep.
It's saying you're going to increase to 1,200 per year, right? So this is sort of your old number, and sorry, this is your old number.
Mm-hmm.
This is your new number, right?
Mm-hmm.
Saying that they're going to decrease variable cost by 5. So let's take the 30 minus 5, right? That'll be the new number, right? Okay.
Mm-hmm.
And again, your new unit number will be 1,200. So thank you for that. Okay. And then let's see. And adding $5,000 to your advertising budget. So that means that we're going to take the 15,000 and we're going to add 5,000, right, of additional advertising, right?
Mm-hmm.
We've got some changes here, right? Now, say anything about it asks us to construct the base case projected P&L statement, and the projected P&L statement incorporating the proposed changes. Okay. So in other words, we're going to do our base case, which will be this one, right? This is what we're going to do, base case. And then this is the projected. Okay. All right. Now they didn't mention anything about changing the rate, the revenue rate. So we're going to assume that's the same, right? Okay. So now let's do revenue. Let's do our P&L, revenue. Okay, we'll do cost. Now let's, under cost, we'll do variable cost, and then we'll do fixed cost, okay? Total cost, and then we'll do net income, okay? All right, so let's do for both cases. So we've got our revenue is going to be 1,000 units times $50, okay? That's going to be the revenue for the original case. The projected will be 1,200 units times $50, okay? That revenue is going to be 60,000, okay? And I'm going to do a variance, just a variance down here, right here, okay? So we can see the change, okay? Mm-hmm. Variable cost is going to be the 30 times the units again, right? And I'm going to make sure all of these have, okay. And then your variable cost on this one is going to be 25 times 1,200 units, right? Okay. Fixed costs, we know in this example is 15,000. in this example, it's 20,000, right? Okay. So total costs then, we'll add them together. 45, and this is 50. Okay, so what's net income? Here we have 50,000 units subtracted by 45,000 in costs. And in this one, it's 60,000 units subtracted by 50,000 in costs. You have a pickup, don't you? Right? So now is this, I'm going to put the variances here because I like to see those variances. Why don't we take the profit margin? And let's see what the margin, the percentage is. So that you take the net income of 5,000 divided by the revenue, okay? And we look at the percentage. That's a 10%. That's what we were making in our base case. Okay. And now with this new, we're making 17%. Okay. So by adding, by cutting our costs slightly, it allowed us to, and I think actually what I think maybe what they're suggesting we probably do here is to actually cut our revenue as well, even though they didn't say it. But let's look at that in a second and just see. The question would be, by cutting your cost, how would that increase your visits per year? Is there any correlation there? It really wouldn't, because your patients wouldn't know that you're cutting your costs, would they? They wouldn't know that you're making more money. Right? So if you were to pass that cost on to your clients, however, you might get more clients. Does that make sense?
Like if they didn't know the original price was $30 and then you just tell them up front it's $25?
No, but if you said, by cutting my variable cost by $5, I'm all of a sudden making more money down here. So let me take my rate, my revenue rate, and actually take $5 off of that, okay? That my consumers don't have to pay as much. So if I were to take $5 off my revenue rate, I have more units. You see that? I have more units, but I'm getting less money per unit, okay? So am I better off or worse off?
Worse. Maybe
I'm
10%.
worse off, right? So if I were to leave my price the same, not reduce it, but have more marketing, and maybe that's what it is. Maybe that marketing, by me having more marketing and going out and advertising, maybe that's how I got more consumers. Maybe that's how I got more patients to come in, right? So it's really important that you understand sort of like what are the drivers of the business. If somebody said if you gave a price decrease, you would get more consumers. Sometimes it does make sense. Like if we were to do a scenario here, I bet you we could find a scenario where having a price decrease and getting more units actually does make more sense and allows you to be more profitable. But in this case, if you were to pass on your $5 variable cost savings and allowed your consumers to pay $5 less, you would make less money overall, right? But let's look at a scenario where we reduced our price by $5. Okay, let's go ahead and take that $5 out of there, minus 5. So now we're only charging $45 per unit, per visit. Let's say that it allowed us to get 1,500 patients, okay? So we just saw an increase of 500 patients by reducing our revenue by $5. So they all told their friends, oh, wow, you can get the best price at this clinic, right? Now, was that worth it?
No.
What was that?
No.
It wasn't worth it?
It went up to 15. Well, yes, but the way we had it before was a higher profit margin.
Well, right. This is the previous case, right?
Right.
Base case we're comparing it against. So in this base case, we made $5,000, and that's 10% profit. In this new case, we're making $10,000 at 15% profit. So is it better
Yes, because you
Us
went up 5%.
to reduce our pricing to our consumers. If we can get more consumers, if that's what we're getting in return for that, because if we don't reduce our price, let's as an example, we don't get these additional 500 consumers. Let's just say we don't get, right?
Yeah.
And I think what we'd also have to do is we'd have to say, well, I think what's maybe confusing is I've got two different scenarios going on at once. Why don't we create a brand new one here so that it doesn't confuse you? Okay. So this is, and then here's a second one. All right. This one will be the $45 that I was just talking about, where we take $5 off. Okay. And we get 1,500 new, new clients. And our variable cost is going to be cheaper as well. And here in this scenario, we've got fixed costs of 20,000 as well. So it's kind of like compounding it, I guess. So in this scenario, you can see we're making 15% by price reduction. So essentially, this is a price reduction. That's what that scenario is, price reduction. This scenario is marketing, marketing investment, right? Okay. So if your boss says to you, "Hey, I want to see the margin, I want to see the profit margin go up," right? What are you going to do? Give me your recommendations on how you can get the profit margin up, okay? Well, here's two different ways potentially that you could offer it to him, you or her. You could say, "Hey, you could spend 5,000 more in marketing, and you'll get more patients. You get 200 more patients. That will take our profit margin up. And if you also can, cut your variable costs, then you're going to make 17% in this case. If you reduce your price and cut your variable costs and go ahead and do the marketing, you'll get a little better, right? Not as good as this one, right? But you'll get 15%. So I think again, you just have to look and see what's the better option of all three options. Obviously, this one's the best, right? Just doing and reducing your costs, but not passing that cost reduction onto your consumers is better. Okay. I know we're almost out of time, but I think hopefully this gives you guys an idea of how these kind of numbers work and how you can play around with these. Do you have any questions on this? Would you like to see a particular example or problem?
I had a question about the homework.
Yeah.
So for the discounts on.
Let me go to the program. Which one was that one? Discounts on. Okay.
Yeah. So let me just open up quickly. So for the first question, it says, at what price does it not make sense to take the proposed deal over the status quo? And I just said when the profit is higher for status quo, like, is that as simple as that?
Well, but I think what we want to see is if you price low enough, right? Then there will be a point where it doesn't, right? It's less, correct? So I think I just want to see what is that point. Just give an example of what that point is. Does that make sense? Like do a scenario where it doesn't.
Okay.
Because you've got pricing here, right? And you've got pricing at volume 2, right? And so the question is, what because I think you're given the second price. So where would you say, sorry, I'm not going to do that deal, right? What would be the price where you would say, no, it doesn't work? Does that make sense?
Okay.
If someone's offering you a really good deal, you have to do this math and say, does it really work, or not?
Hmm.
Yeah. So is everyone kind of following these examples? Do you guys get this? Does it make a little sense?
Yeah.
Yes, it helped.
Yeah.
Was that somebody that said no?
Yes, it helps.
Okay, great.
And I have one more question about that same tab. So for the problem 11,
Yep.
if you could if you could increase the units, what units are you changing? The volume at price 1 or price 2, or which volume are we changing?
So I think basically it's the new units, right? It's the units under the new deal, not the old deal, right? It's the new deal. Because often when you have a lower price, you can sell more units,
Mm-hmm.
right? So I think what we're looking at is units under the new price. Is there a point where it does make sense? Because again, think about these kind of things, you've often got multiple factors that you can play with, right? You can play with the units, you can play with the variable cost, you can play with the price, which is variable, you can play with the fixed cost. So all those things are potential factors that you might be able to find a scenario where under certain conditions, each one of those factors could make the dilemma work financially, right? And so that's what's important to understand in this kind of in business is like you've got lots of options. So look and see which one makes most, which one could work for you. There's usually not just one answer. There's usually multiple. But I think what I wanted to do is have you solve for units being the item that you're looking to solve for, right? Like everything else is constant, and what would the units need to be to make the problem work? So again, it's really good if you do multiple scenarios, right? And just try playing around with different numbers. But I think I tried to make that as easy for you as possible with some of these, where the gray cells I'm saying are the input. So if you input your changes into the gray cells, hopefully you'll see what that does to the rest of the problem.
Okay. Yeah, just changing the volume at price 2 for 11.
Yeah.
Okay.
Right.
Yeah.
Right. Yep. Good. Okay. Yeah, I hope you guys got to see how the changes were, reflected in the P&Ls when you change numbers, right? That it really, you should be able to watch the P&Ls change. Like if you were to change in this example, I think we have fixed costs here somewhere. Yeah, here. If you have the fixed costs, you see that the charts really do change, right? Quite a bit. So it's good to play around with that and just kind of watch and see what happens with the charts. Okay, I am going to stop this video, okay, because I want to start another one.
I have a question. I'm curious. Sorry, before.
Let me just see if I can do that. Stop share. Okay, whoops, stop share. I'll do that, okay. And then I'll stop. Sorry, one sec. Okay, resume.